So I'll just go right over to the panelists now and turn it over to Michele and have her introduce herself. Then I'll have Pastor Cook introduce himself, and I'll lead a guided discussion with some great questions. And again, towards the end, we'll have a question and answer session where everyone else can ask questions as well. So Michele, with no further ado, please introduce yourself.
Well, good morning, Tom, and good morning, Pastor Cook, and all of you that are on this call. Super excited to be here. My name is Michele Reynolds. I am the founder and Chief Executive Officer of a faith-based nonprofit housing organization called NICER Inc. That stands for Nothing into Something Real Estate. We are the parent company of the EXIT program that many people may have heard about. EXIT program stands for Ex-Offenders in Transition, and we've been in business for at least the last 15 years. And so I have another role. I am the director of the Governor's Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. So happy to join you all this morning and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Tom, for setting the tone today. And it's an honor to be with both of you and Michele. My name is Pastor Vaughn Cook, but my mother calls me Vaughn. So I'm asking all of my friends what you are to call me Vaughn if you ever see me. But I serve as the senior pastor at the Gethsemane United Methodist Church, and we're located on the southeast quarter of Columbus, Ohio. And we have several missions on our hands, so to speak. And I'll go through some of that later on. But this issue of homelessness, as Tom mentioned, is not just for reentry concerns. It's a general society concern. It is bigger than one man can solve. And I truly believe it takes a collaborative effort in a real way to see these numbers of homelessness decline. I believe it's possible, but we must be intentional through our care and concern for one another. So thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you this morning.
Thank you both. Michele, I love the name of the company, Nothing into Something Real Estate. I quickly wrote that down as you were tell me what the acronym stood for. You mentioned that it was started 15 years ago. Tell us a little about how you started the organization and where it currently is with relation to pandemic operations.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I'll try to make this brief. But I moved to Columbus, Ohio on September 11th in 2001, the day that the Twin Towers and everything crashed in New York City. And when I came here, I was just a single mom trying to start over. And I figured if I couldn't make it in Columbus, I couldn't make it anywhere. One of my first jobs that I was able to receive here in Columbus was with a community corrections organization that many people know as Alvis House. It's now Alvis Inc. And I got that position, and I was the director of their special MRDD, which is the offenders with developmental disabilities who happen to also have sexual offenses. And so I was that director for about 4 years. And through my access to understand the needs of not just that population, but started to understand what was going on in our community here in Central Ohio, I attended a few meetings and found out that our shelter system, and you'll appreciate this, Tom, because you were with COC, our shelter system was closing its doors to sex offenders. I mean, for obvious reasons, that for public safety, and they were housing women and children, but there just was really no room for anyone who had any type of serious offense. Well, as the director of that program, and although it was for developmentally disabled, we had a number of sexual offenders in the program. So through my affiliation with the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction and the Adult Parole Authority, I saw a real need. I saw a need, not because I'm passionate about necessarily helping abusers, but I saw a public safety issue. And I said, here's a population of people that is not allowed to be homeless. They have to register an address, but yet and still we're shutting our doors, which makes all of us very, very, very vulnerable. And so I contacted my boss at the time and said, look, I, as a third generation business owner growing up in a group home myself, my grandparents opened one when I was 4 for the developmentally disabled. That's my background. I knew I wanted to do something in housing, and I just had a passion, and I felt like the Lord was calling me to fill in this gap. And so my boss said, look, you can take, if you want to be a compassionate landlord and take people in, that's fine. You just can't take who we take. It'd be a conflict of interest. So I contacted the Parole Authority and I said, look, I have a rental property. I had just got a rental property because my grandmother had passed away and left me a small inheritance. So I used that to buy a property, and I got the green light from my employer. I contacted the Parole Authority and said, look, I'm not a shelter, but if you refer some people to me who really need a place to stay, I'll at least be compassionate enough to allow them to stay there. It's not free, it's not a shelter, but for a nominal cost of just, at the time it was $10 a day. If they did a work a day, pay a day situation, they'd be able to afford it. So I started that way as just being a compassionate landlord. They started sending me people. Well, at that point, it wasn't something that was kind of standard that offenders could even live together. Back then, they couldn't cohabitate, they couldn't live together, they couldn't even really talk to each other, like mingle with each other. That was part of their conditions of supervision, to stay apart. But with there being such a housing shortage and not a place to go, the Parole Authority recognized that that's just not going to work. So they were able to change some policies to allow offenders to live together in a group congregate setting. And so once I was in it for about 4 months, I was able to expand from 1 house to 4 houses because the need was just so great. And a lot of the folks that I was getting were sexual offenders. And it's just because I didn't discriminate. And so the Parole Authority reached out to me and said, look, we really think this is a solution. We want to put together an RFP, but you need to be a nonprofit organization. We're going to call this independent housing, but you have the model and we want to know if you'll apply. Well, at first I told them, no, I'm not going to apply because I work at Alva's house and I know I'll have to quit my job because then I'll really be, it'll be a conflict. And so I said, I'll just take whoever, gets the contract, whatever they don't take, there's enough for everybody, because I wasn't ready to quit my job. And I liked also being in control. I like telling people, you can stay, or if it's not working out, you can't stay. I like that. So as fate would have it, I ended up they eliminated my position at Alva's house. And so I was free. And so I went ahead, started my nonprofit organization, which is nothing into something real estate. I went after the contract and I secured it in 2006 and have had it ever since. We are now we started with 15 beds in Columbus. We are now in Columbus, Akron, Mansfield, Chillicothe, and Cincinnati with over 100 beds. And we contract with the Department of Rehab and Correction, the U.S. courts, district courts, and some of the local counties to provide housing for this very special population, not just sexual offenders, but all offenders who do not have a place to call home. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Michele, what a great story. Can you please come to Toledo too?
Yes.
Vaughn, you got a pretty big story there to follow up on.
Ooh, she set the bar way up there, didn't she, Tom?
I know your church sits in a distressed community, and you have a significant amount of space around your building. What efforts are you doing to help address the housing crisis using the current resources that you have?
Wow, that's awesome. It kind of goes along with Michele's unction of being a visionary, a dreamer, one who just naturally just sees things sometimes that others don't see. So the first thing that I did when I was appointed here at Gethsemane, and if I can, I'd like to share my share screen with you so perhaps you can see what I see as I say this. I'm going to share this. So here we go. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Can you see my screen? Okay. So when I was appointed to this church, I saw, first of all, what we have versus what we do not have. So here we sit in the middle of a pretty large neighborhood that is currently dealing with a community which has been relocated from the inner city to a somewhat suburban area on the southeast side of Columbus. Okay, so I'm going to close this so you can see. So I saw what we have. Secondly, I noticed that the church itself sits right across from a park which has nothing. That's one of the other issues. Then I saw what I saw on our property is I saw that we have about 4 to 5 acres of land in the back of our building. If you all can see that. And so with that, the first step was we created 5 years ago a garden, community garden, where the community is welcome to participate in the planting and the harvesting at no cost. And by keeping the garden itself open with no locks, we don't have a problem with theft. Why? Because it's free anyway. Anyone who has a need, who's homeless, who's hungry, they can come and pick corn, many zucchini, all types of vegetables. Okay, so the vision began with that. Once that started, God showed me this once again. And I said, Lord, what am I to do with all of this? And I heard his voice literally say, build. And so since then, I have been working with the Columbus Coalition, and I'm going to stop my screen. And go back here. Hang on a second. Sorry about that. I'm going to start my screen again. I'll take you off here. Here we go. And so from that, based upon that, I have been trying to raise awareness all across this country, Ohio, trying to find collaborative resources to help with the next step of building tiny homes. And lo and behold, just last month, the director of the Columbus Coalition for the Homeless here in Columbus contacted me and said, hey, I heard you're interested in leasing your land. And it was just like a dream come true, Michele, because they saw the vision that I saw, tiny homes in our back, which can help ease the pain of homelessness, whether you're incarcerated or whether you've just been down on your luck and you need a hand up to get a step up just to get you back on track. So that's what I've been working on. And it's been exciting, but a great challenge. And I hope to have this all completed within 2 years.
Pastor, that is just incredible. I'm awestruck listening to both of your stories. With the community garden, we know there's so many food insecurities in neighborhoods. I think that's just something that could be replicated so easily, almost anywhere, and at least can make a dent in people eating healthier but to take it to the next level with the tiny houses. We have a project starting here in Toledo, so I'm going to stay in contact with both of you through email after this presentation to get more information. Michele, back to you. COVID has really affected a lot of different operations. From the way we eat out, the way we shop, just the way we interact with others. How has it impacted the housing situations in your houses, the living situations, but also how has it impacted your business model moving forward?
So that's a great question, Tom. We've all had to shift during this COVID pandemic. And especially in what we do in providing housing. As you know, the pandemic not only hit us, but it impacted the prison system because of the congregate setting. And so many, we know that there were offenders that were in the prison system that, quite frankly, were contracting the virus. And the governor had made some decisions to help try to social distance the prisons enough where we could get some people out of the prisons. Well, obviously, when they're coming back to the community, that means that we had some individuals coming to the housing program that also had the virus. And so that definitely impacted our program, because we were in a position where we needed to be able to quarantine individuals coming from the institution, and to also keep others safe while also operating a congregate housing setting. And so what we did was we set up some quarantine rooms that allowed individuals to be able to be more isolated and not necessarily in a congregate setting with other folks sharing kitchen and sharing the bathroom and things like that. So we designated a few rooms and properties specifically for those that needed to quarantine houses, if you will. So that really helped in that transition. But yet and still, we also had staff to think about. People have to, come to work. It's not a virtual situation where staff come, they have to come to work. They have to do their monitoring checks. These individuals are in an independent living situation, but they're not, and they're not, but they're not in a halfway house. But we still need to make sure that we have checks and balances and staff reporting to work. And so we had to be very careful. We made sure that we took advantage of all of the offerings of PPE, personal protective equipment and supplies that were made available to us. We also were able to obtain a PPP loan grant to buy special supplies and to make sure that we were able to give hazard pay for our essential workers and things like that. So just really shifting across the board, and we've done a really good job. I can't say that we haven't really been personally impacted by COVID, because I myself actually had the virus as well as some of my other coworkers. And it's not an easy thing to get over. Thank God it was mild, but it has impacted us in this space. And so one of the good things, though, that it's done is it's improved our communications, because we're doing more virtual meetings like this. We have weekly Microsoft Teams calls or Zoom calls with our staff, our executive team, our board members. And so we're able to tighten up communications, whereas before we may have, just taken for granted that we were able to see each other in passing at the job. But when you don't have that, then you have to make sure that you're still communicating. So there's been some pros and cons, but I think the biggest thing in the congregate living setting is trying to really keep people safe, but still be able to operate, because people, quite frankly, still need a place to call home.
Thank you, Michele. Yeah, we've all had to really deal with adjusting our life, daily activities to cope with the virus. So I know it's very challenging for a congregate setting. So your efforts are applauded for how you're protecting your people. Back to the pastor on this next question. You're blessed to have that space, and other churches may not have that space to do something that you're about to take on there with the houses. But what strategies could other churches and houses of worship deploy to help address the affordable housing crisis in their communities right now, in your opinion? You're on mute.
I apologize. We're not a large congregation. As a matter of fact, I'm just joyous to see 30. So we're blessed to have all of this land. And that actually is what led me to find out how can we increase our membership? How can we at the same time increase our awareness as far as the need to be connected with the community. And I realized that these 4 steps that I mentioned to you earlier are really the strategies that I encourage everyone to at least try. Take a look at what you do have rather than what you don't have. You know, if you continue to concentrate on what you do not have or what you can't do, nothing will be accomplished. And while you're doing that, there are people out there that are suffering, and they're looking for the church to be the church that God is calling us to be at this time. So I would encourage everyone just to take step one, take a look at what you can do rather than what you cannot do. And it doesn't have to be uh, as grand as tiny homes. As a matter of fact, this is going to be one of my greatest challenges, because now I'm dealing with I'm dealing with provisions, city provisions. I'm dealing with all type. What does community think about having a homeless in our backyard? All these types of things. So there's a great challenge ahead for me. I'm aware of this, but am I going to let that stop me? No, I'm not. Or else I'll never be able to touch people like Michelle's doing, like you're doing, Tom. So the greatest need, or excuse me, the advice or consult that I would give is just dream, think big, think bigger than where you are, and great things can happen. Um, the second thing that I would really say would be to just try to find someone to connect with, just start out with. There may be another church, there may be another organization that's looking for volunteers. Start that way, but just don't sit there and squander over what you do not have and what you can't do. I mean, it just is that simple.
Well, clearly, both of you have seen how to create something out of nothing, and great visions. Vaughn, how many houses are they planning on the property?
We're going to start small, right? You know, this is a major project. I
Sure
mean,
it
it's
is.
a mini plethora. So we were aiming to start with 3 to 5 houses. They're probably going to average around 6 to 7 square feet. They won't have showers in them in there. They'll or really a restroom, but there'll be a center, a community center that they will all shower in and eat in. And so with that, it's going to take more efforts and more collaborations with other organizations
Sure.
that come alongside us for volunteers and monetary support. And also we are going to be willing to work with others. So it's a bang bang situation, so
It's like,
yeah, so
well,
yeah.
not only with reentry, but with homelessness, we all know collaboration is the key to success.
It's a must.
You have to have that. Well, my next question is going to be for both presenters. We'll start with Michele. What are some, for the folks on this call, what are some opportunities that you see emerging that we should be figuring out moving forward to help people with affordable housing?
Thank you, Tom, for that question. I think that we have a very good opportunity at hand with the opportunity zones. If you're not familiar with opportunity zones, I would encourage you to get familiar with opportunity zones. It's a federal and now state program that incentivizes private investment to look into neighborhoods that need some development. It can be development in housing or business. And it encourages that private investment to pour those dollars into those neighborhoods and to be able to be kind of like a win-win situation. So outside investment, it leverages public-private partnership. So if outside investors will give the capital to actually help create affordable housing or jobs, then what the government does is they defer their capital gains. So they defer their capital gains taxes over the 10-year investment period. So that way they do not have to pay capital gains taxes on their investments. So what happens is, and I'm a realtor, so you have to excuse me, but what happens is if someone, say, Tom, you have a business that you just sold, you have a piece of real estate that you just sold. Well, you would have to report that as income on your taxes. And that's pretty significant. So what they're saying is instead of doing that, you can roll that over, that profit and those taxes. You can defer those taxes by rolling your investment over into maybe investing in Pastor Cook's tiny house concept. And then that allows him to have the capital that he needs to develop it. But then you're also an investor. So whatever contracts or housing he's getting, you get dividends payments during those 10 years, but you're also not paying taxes for those 10 years. And then after that, you're able to get 100% of your investment without paying the taxes. And now the state of Ohio has weighed in to also incentivize those investments as well. So here in Ohio, we have a little over 40 some opportunity zones throughout the state of Ohio. Ohio was an early adopter of it when the federal government put it out there to see what states wanted to designate certain zones in their communities. Ohio got on board and actually put zones out there. And so they've been approved. And so I'm happy that our organization owns property in opportunity zones. And so we're going to be able to see our project that we started with the cargo miniums. We're going to be able to see that finished now through private investment. And so I think there's a real opportunity. You need to see what property you all own or properties that you in neighborhoods that are dilapidated that really need that investment. And either you can facilitate being a part of operating something for housing, or maybe you are looking to make some investments yourself and you can be the investor to help get that done in your neighborhood. But there's a real opportunity through the opportunity zones.
Michele, I would definitely agree with that. And just so everybody on the call, you can Google opportunity zones in Ohio, and it'll take you to the Ohio Department of Development where you can find out information. I know we have a low income tax credit project going forward this coming year for 60 reentry / homeless units with supportive services. That's the housing choice vouchers are already in place. So it's exciting to see things like that happen, but they take so long to come to fruition. So thank you, Michele, for pointing that out. Pastor, what do you think some opportunities might be?
Okay, yeah, I'm going to throw you a little twist here. I'd like to have legislation look at our discrimination law, and because our reentering brothers and sisters are just having a heck of a time. I'm going to keep that clean, but they're having a heck of a time trying just to get a 1-bedroom or a studio. And I'll be honest with you, this is tearing up their dignity. You know, they don't want to be homeless. And I really believe that if we take a closer look or try to make some action as far as our discrimination law, and that will ease the pain, okay, of being denied. I've been working with a gentleman for over 1 year now, and I was who had been released, and I was there from day one. He works a job. He's been working a job on day 2 of his release. He works 8 to 12 hours every day except for Sundays, and so he's been saving up his money. He's been doing quite well. And yet and still, the greatest challenges that we have, and I have as his mentor, walking alongside of him, is finding one unit or finding a landlord that will open the door. And so, again, looking at legislation, taking a look at our discrimination law will be a major help. Major help. So yeah.
Go ahead.
Yep. I agree with you. I'm also on the board of our Fair Housing Center here, and we do look at a lot of criminal history look back periods can be result in discrimination. So we're actively always trying to look at how we can change the landscape, and I think that's a great area of opportunity across the whole state to take a look at. Michele, were you going to say something?
Yes, thank you. I definitely agree that we need a balanced approach. But I also like to encourage the faith community that we are the solution that we're looking for. We are it. We are the light. We are the salt. And we need more private solutions to public problems. Government cannot solve our problems. We know that. And that does not mean that we should not be at the table, because we should be influencing the table. But we also we're the guide. We're the ones that the Lord called. So I like what Pastor Vaughn said about what is it that you can do. There's plenty of things that you can't do, but what is it that you can do? And sometimes that's just being a piece of a puzzle. You may not have the land, but you may have, the acumen to run a house. And so putting those pieces together, you may have the capital, or you may have the beds. We're a body of Christ, right? We're a body. And so one person isn't the whole body, but everybody makes up the body. And there is something that we can all do. We're all an essential piece. So I think that there are very good opportunities by looking in your own community, finding out where the gaps are, and then partnering with people who can help fill the gaps. And that's what I did. And I think that that's what we all should be doing as a faith community.
I'm going to ask everybody, because I know you both have talked about your unique approaches to affordable housing and given some opportunities, and that's a lot to take in. I know I've been taking a lot of notes. If anybody has a question at this point, I'm going to pause for a few minutes here. You're going to have to, don't use the chat feature because it's currently not working. If you do have a question and want to ask, please take yourself off mute, ask the question, and then remute your device. Does anyone have a question currently? Teresa, do you have a question? Or Ebony? If you're either asking a question, we can't hear anything. Well, I know there was, well, we'll pause again here shortly. It doesn't appear anybody really has a question right now, but there are some HUVA questions that have come in. One of them being, and I'll pose this to both of you for your ideas and thoughts. How can nonprofit organizations get access to property at a reduced rate? Is there a process for that, Michele? I know you're the real estate agent, or a pastor, if you know of anything along those lines.
So yes, one of the things that your community has, most communities in Ohio have a land bank, and your local land bank is operated through your county. And so here in Columbus, we have Columbus and Franklin County have come together with a land bank. And so in those land banks are properties that are reduced. They're generally properties that have been reverted back because of someone not paying property taxes or things like that. And the city and county have been taking care of the properties by, the grass and things like that, but they're willing to sell them at a reduced rate. And sometimes they even have, where you can get them for $1, but you have to make sure that you submit plans. They have to approve your plans for what you want to do with the property, whether it's vacant lots or one with a structure on it. And then if they approve your plans, you need to, show that you have the wherewithal to be able to execute those plans. So that is a way to be able to get property at a reduced rate. But there's also through, working for the government, there are times that you can partner with some of the state or county departments because they all have real estate. And when I say partner, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to sell it to you, but they may be able to lease space to you for your nonprofit activity. I myself, we are located, our offices are located in the Terry Collins Reentry Center in Chillicothe for the exit program. Also in some of the institutions where we have coffee crafters, our social enterprise, we were able to get space in the prison institutions, and we don't necessarily pay rent for that. But they allow us to use that space to operate for our coffee operations. So there are ways to then partner with government organizations who have real estate assets to be able to execute your nonprofit activities.
Great ideas. Pastor, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and Michele, that was, you stole the thunder on that one, but I do have a little additional. But that, first of all, the local land bank is the way to go. It's tough to get, and you have to have a lot of support. You have to have your I's dotted and your T's crossed. But that would be option number one. Option number two, in my advice, sitting in my position, I believe that this would probably be the best time to take this approach because of the pandemic. Just ask. The reason why I say this, churches all across the nation, most of them are struggling with the bottom line budget right now. And if we have a piece of property that we're not using or what have you, I think right now more than ever we are in a position to maybe receive a telephone call of offer. You know, we may not be necessarily interested in selling the land, but leasing the land, most definitely, because of the church's bottom line. And again, I'm just going to be transparent. That's why I'm in this motion or in this mindset to build, because of the survival of the church. So right now, I would have to say there's nothing wrong with simply making a call and ask. You never know. A closed mouth never gets fed. And again, I'm always willing for options. So that would be my advice. Just reach out. You never know what you could land on.
Thank you. That's great. Michele, you're connected with the governor's office of faith-based and community initiatives, right?
Yes, sir.
What opportunities from that perspective do you see that are currently out there for faith-based communities to collaborate and solve and help solve the housing shortage?
So I really do believe that my position there is by divine assignment. One thing that I didn't share in my story is that the first grant that I went after when I started my nonprofit was through the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. And it was for a capacity building grant to actually help me build my nonprofit organization. And it was for $10,000 and I received it. And because of that, because them helping me to strengthen and get the right tools that I needed to get my 501c3 and to get my consultants to put my operations manual and things together, I was able to go after my first contract with the Ohio Department of Rehab and Correction and be strengthened in that. And so I say that to say that my role here now is to actually help other nonprofits do what I was able to do. Being on the inside and seeing how there are barriers between, the government side and the nonprofit side, and being able to help eliminate those barriers, but also inviting our faith-based partners to the table and encouraging them to seek public resources for the work that they're doing. And so because of that, in this administration, we've been able to double our budget. Our budget when I first came in was $6.5 million. We were able to advocate that the General Assembly approve us for $13.285 to double it. And with that, we've been able to make more grants to these grassroots, faith-based and nonprofit organizations across the state that are doing good work, especially in the areas of housing. And so there are opportunities to partner with our office for what I would call operations and capacity building. So our dollars cannot help you secure property, but if you have property, or if you're helping people with a place to stay and you're helping to pay their rent and things like that, or you have staff members that can provide services, direct services to low and moderate income people, which is generally who we're serving, then there is money to support those efforts in the Governor's Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. And my role is to help you access those opportunities and those dollars for what you're doing.
That's good to know. I wasn't even aware of those opportunities from the governor's office. And again, like I said, I'm making notes here. And if anybody, just remember this is being recorded too. So if anybody would like a copy of it, I'm sure that Reba can get it out to to folks because you've given us a lot of great information. Pastor, you mentioned you have a small congregation. How do you how do you encourage them to move forward and collaborate and because you're taking on some huge projects there?
Yeah, Tom, that's an issue that tends to keep me up all night. I'm just going to be honest with you. Folks don't like change. People do not like change. I mean, it's inevitable. Change is going to come. If I need to speak about my community, but it's sometimes hard, very hard to get buy-in. And to be honest with you, I'm not the greatest car salesman. You know, I'll tell you where the dent is, or if it has a bad starter, and the car would just sit there on the lot. But but that is the challenge of getting people to buy into your dream, your vision, having them to see the big picture, especially during a pandemic era. You know, folks are scared to walk out the door. They're scared to walk up to you and say hello. They're scared that you might be too close at Kroger's. You know what I mean? So it's a greater challenge now. And again, but the thing is that if you believe in something strong enough, you don't have to try to sell it, because you'll live that dream out, and folks will, in your speech, it seems like folks will start seeing the picture more and more as you believe in that vision, in that dream. So yeah, it can keep you up all night, trying to convince people of what, to get on board. But I just keep pressing on. I don't know how better to say that.
Good, thank you. It sounds you could sell me a car, I think.
I could not. I tell you honestly what's wrong with the car, and it would sit there in the lot because I'd feel convicted. So
I'd probably talk you down on price. Michele, there is a question on the Whova app. Does the governor's office of faith-based initiatives provide any mentoring or assistance with mentoring?
So I would call that technical assistance. We do provide technical assistance. In the next probably in November, we're going to roll out our nonprofit training series. And I thought I saw Angie Lee on the line, but we are going to be providing assistance with how to put together really good grant proposals and really helping people, because we realize that a lot of churches and faith-based organizations, they may not be used to writing grants. They're just doing the work, and it's been sweat equity. Their churches have supported their efforts. So now coming into this grant space, that's not necessarily a skill that they have that that they use often. So our job and our role is going to be to provide that training and technical assistance, so that when RFPs do come out, they feel like they're well prepared to go after them. And so that's something that's coming really soon. But in the interim, we do lots of outreach. We have events where we make sure that people are in the know about what opportunities are available through our office. It's been challenging because of COVID, but we still continue to do some outreach efforts as well. But yes, we do provide technical assistance.
That's good to know. I'm going to pause again here for anybody in the audience that would like to ask a question. Again, the chat feature is not working, so if you take yourself off mute, you can ask the question, and we have some great answers I'm sure you're going to get back. Teresa, do you have a question?
Good morning, Tom. I have a question.
Yeah, Johnny, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
Good morning. Good morning to our panelists. Thank you for sharing everything that you've been sharing. My question is what would be a good approach to try to, and I understand right now with the pandemic, that the faith community is hurting the same way that everyone else is hurting. But what would be the best approach to try to really help bring the church community together so that they're not working kind of like in independent silos on independent efforts, but more of a how can you all do a little bit more together? I know that that's happening, so I don't want to speak naively about it not necessarily happening, but what would be the suggestion or approach to that to really try to galvanize the churches a little bit more? It's kind of similar to what the Baptist Alliance congregations are doing, and also Bread.
Great question, Johnny. Vaughn, you look like you have a great answer to that one.
Donnie, that is an ancient question. It's an ancient issue, and it's just not about the issues we're talking about. It's about the survival of the global church, period. First of all, I'm going to say that we as leaders of the church have to realize that we're all working the same mission. We may look differently. We may have different styles, but this denominational border has just ruined the connectivity of the global church. And so, again, that's an answer that those at the top ecumenically are working on. And I do believe we're working on them. And I see communication boundaries being or barriers being brought down every day. I see that. I myself, I'm an outward type person. As a matter of fact, Johnny, they used to call me a Radical Rev here in Columbus on the streets. I don't mind knocking on the door. If I don't know you and if I've never met you and you're leading a church, I'll knock on your door on a Wednesday morning and say, "Hi, I'm Vaughn. I'm the pastor down the street. How you doing?" You know, so if we can have a spirit of openness and see the real need that together we all can accomplish the goal of being that light, as Michele says, of being the vessels of God in a real way, And I see that, Johnny, occurring every day. I see those barriers falling a lot. You may not see it on an everyday situation, but I believe you're going to start seeing the church start to work together, especially as we start to survive. We need one another's assistance. So I hope this helps. I don't want this to be a pie in the sky response, but that's the real work that I'm talking about, is being ecumenical in our efforts. And that means collaboration of all denominations coming together. Unfortunately, we have some personal issues that are in the clouds right now that tends to keep us separated. And this really isn't the platform to talk about it, but there's some issues out there that we are not agreeing upon. And so that's hindering us coming together as well. But I do believe that you will see more togetherness as the months and years approach.
Thank you,
I
Vaughn.
hope that helps.
Michele?
Yes, I would just add, I think that's a very good response. I would just add that nothing brings people together more than a crisis. And I think that the reason we're starting to see some movement in collaborative efforts amongst, denominations is because we have to. We generally think territorial, my church, your church, and that's really sad. But whenever there's a crisis, we have to pull together, and that's what makes us, a collective. And so we have to start operating as a collective. We have to start thinking as a collective. I think forums like this helps, but we also have to remember that we are the church. So we can't wait for the pastor to meet with another pastor. We are the church. We in ourselves, we are the ecclesia. We are the called out. So what is it that God is calling each one of us individually to do in our little essential piece to to, stand in the gap, and we each have to do that. And as we do that and we lead by examples, others will follow.
Great, Michele. Yeah, it just reminds me of the governor's that tagline that they've had throughout the crisis. We're all in this together. Those are great answers to that story. The question, I mean, John, are any other questions from any of the other folks in attendance? If you do, just take yourself off and mute and ask the question. Doesn't appear that anyone has another question, so I'll go back to a prepared question here. Michele, your core organizational values that you have, how have they decided your decisions in making and moving your organization forward, and what are they?
Thank you, Tom. So our 3 core values are empowerment, and accountability, and transformation. And they form the organizational practices of what we do every day. We consider ourselves more than a housing organization. We are here to empower and uplift people who have been broken. We recognize that individuals who have been incarcerated, they've also had family members that were, doing time with them. And so we take empowerment very, very, very seriously. And so, but the other thing is, while we're empowering you, we understand that there has to be a level of accountability in order for the change to happen. And so not only do we hold, those that we serve accountable, we hold ourselves accountable. One of the things that we like to say, and I know this isn't popular in prison, but we like to say, we don't snitch, we tell. And when we say that, when someone's first getting home, they're like, oh, that's not good. We don't snitch or tell. But what we mean by that is that, when you add up all the time that our residents have done serving time in an incarcerated setting, if you add all their time, you're talking about more than 1,000 years. And we will not let just one person ruin that for anyone. Nobody's above the program. Nobody's above the rules. We are going to make sure that you don't mess up this for someone else. If it's not what you need or not what you want, you can't mess it up. So we will hold you accountable. Yes, we will call the parole officer. Yes, we will do all of those things. And so they respect that. And if they don't, then they don't belong in our program. And then all of that then leads to transformation. We want to see lives transformed. This is way more than housing. This is about lives transformed. And that's why we call ourselves Nothing into Something Real Estate. We realize that society considers individuals, especially with sex offenses, nothing. But when we can show the love of God by showing grace and mercy and support, which is what we all need. We're all sinners, saved by grace, that we can transform and be something purposeful. And so empowerment, accountability, and transformation, which we call the EAT program, those are our core values and what govern how we operate every single day.
Michele, I know through some grants I've had that have had housing components to it, we always have issues of damages, things like that, or having to get somebody out of the unit. Do you encounter that a lot or a little bit in your organization?
Yes, we do. And we've had to take creative approaches to that. One of the things that we try to instill in all of our residents is a sense of pride and community for where they live. But, oftentimes, people don't necessarily appreciate what they don't pay for. So we've had to use our resources and our relationship with the parole authority. And there's been times we've been able to tag on costs to supervision fees, not to hold someone back, but they can't get off paper until they paid all their fees. And so if it's significant enough, if they've broken windows or just something that is just really, we can't sustain and there's not a budget for that, we've been able to hold them accountable by going to the parole officer and say, we're submitting a bill, and that whatever, in a year or 2 years, whatever, when it's time for them to come off paper, trust me, they will pay it. and we'll get our money back. So we don't do it all the time, but there are times when we've had to do that.
And Michele, a follow-up question to you on that. We have a landlord here in our community in Toledo that bought a house, has about 6 units there, and wanted to help house people coming out of incarceration. In fact, it's 3 blocks away from me where I live. He is selling to a neighbor. Neighbor's buying him out cash. What has been your experience with NIMBYism when you go to purchase a house and have residents start to move in?
That's a very, very good question. So if we all be honest, no one wants to live near, nobody wants to live near someone who has a past, especially if it has abuse or sexual abuse. Nobody does. And so one of the things that we do is, first of all, we do our due diligence in a neighborhood. We make sure that, first of all, we're legitimately there. We are licensed, we are certified, we follow all zoning laws and requirements. We know what it takes to be there. We're under contract, but we also make sure that we don't just come in a neighborhood under the radar. That does not work. You have to be very transparent with members of that city council, which is hard because they're political and they don't want you there because it could mean their career. So oftentimes you are kind of in neighborhoods that are either high renter occupied and not owner occupied, or you're in a rural area, which is, could be exploitive as well. But that is a real factor. But the other thing that you can do, and what we've done is we've started what we call good neighbor agreements. And so we don't want to just be in the neighborhood, we want to be a part of it. So we make sure that our guys and our ladies are out there. When we're mowing our grass, we offer to mow, 2 doors down one way, 2 doors down the other. We're picking up trash. We're a part of the community so that folks can know, okay, they're not here to hurt us. They're just like us, and this is our community. You have to do those things. We also make it very apparent that who's in charge, so that if someone has any problem, they can certainly contact the manager that's in charge of that house. And we make sure that we get back with them right away and we resolve problems. But that's the only way to do it. And you have to educate, but never think you're just going to creep into a neighborhood. Early on, we tried that and that doesn't work. So you have to make sure that you are there legitimately. First of all, they can't kick you out. It's not about whether they want you to be there. Once you're able to be there legitimately, you can make good neighbor agreements and just be a good neighbor.
That's some great ideas. Vaughn, do you expect any potential backlash from neighbors that are adjoining your church?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it, not only am I expecting it, but it's already occurring. Again, that's part of the thing that keeps you up at night. And Michele, I know, Tom, both of you know that's very distressing. But you have to stay focused and you have to stay motivated, and making good neighbor agreements, to be honest with you, that's brilliant. Who wouldn't want their lawn cut on a 90-degree day? Cut my grass and you can move in, shovel my snow, that'd be great. So that got the wheels rolling here as well. How can we give back in a real way? I'm big about being real, okay? That will ease the concerns. But you ask a question about core values. Am I correct? It comes down to that. It really comes down to that. And I would advise that we all, when we're given a dream, when we have a vision, that is the next step. Create core values, because that's what's going to influence others to jump on board. For instance, our denominational core value, basically, or our mission is that we're making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And Michele brought up transformation already. It's from that mission that we in our congregation, our core values are compassion, community, and commitment. The 3 C's. And based upon those criteria or commitments or what have you, we are able to dissect what we can do versus what we can't do. but because of our commitment that allows us to set legitimate, realistic expectations of the challenge of what we want to do. But yeah, you have to. Right now, I'm dealing with the area commission. I'm going to have to deal with the city of Columbus council and everything. So I'm prepared for that. And to be honest with you, the more counseling you get, the more mentoring, the more leadership you can get, the more connections you can gain, will give you a greater sense of wisdom and direction. So reach out to the folks that you're hearing in this group. Be connectional. That really helps us to get through the challenge of what we're facing.
Thank you, Vaughn. I know we have a local reentry service provider that often, well, every year they do apply for COC funding. Michele and Vaughn, you both may be aware that the Continuum of Cares every year apply for national funding from HUD. It's that time of year currently all around the state. And the reentry provider, their program is called Walls for All. Have either of you considered any of the federal funding sources out there to supplement the funding that you're getting from state or local sources?
May I answer this first before Michele, because mine is real quick and easy.
Go ahead.
That's our next steps. So there we go. Over to you, Michele.
So, Tom, thank you for the question. In our Cincinnati region, we've been a permanent supportive housing provider through the COC Strategies to End Homelessness since 2008.
Okay.
Or maybe it was, maybe not quite 8, but for a number of years. And so we've gone through that process of being on that unified funding application through the local COC, going through groups, large group scoring, the whole 9 yards, to help for housing, but more for the chronically homeless who also then have offenses as well. And so we have gone through that process. It is very different from the state process, but yes, we have gone through that in our efforts. And then also we have a contract with the U.S. Probation Office, U.S. District Courts through that office as well.
And I asked that question just so everybody on the call understands that they have local funding. They can get funding through their local COC Continuum of Care. If you're in a smaller rural community, it would be the Balance of State Continuum of Care, but there is potential funding there. We only have a few minutes left in this great. I've learned so much today. Are there any other questions from the audience? Please speak up if you do have a question. Well, I think we've given them opportunities to ask questions. And Michele, any parting? We'll conclude by offering some parting words. We have about 3 minutes left, so maybe take a minute or so to offer any parting words.
So thank you all just for joining this great conference and this workshop on affordable housing. I would encourage each of you, if housing is your burden, if it's something that you're passionate about and you're just looking for how do you get started, connect with me, connect with our office, Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. You can always visit our website, www.faith-based.ohio.gov. I'll say it again, faith-based.ohio.gov. And that is our website. There is information about resources that our office provides, as well as grant opportunities. And then there is my contact information as well. If our chat was working, I would drop it in the chat. I apologize. But certainly interested in hearing what you're working on and how our office may be able to support your efforts. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Michele. And Vaughn, final words from you. And if you would even like to offer a prayer over the group to conclude, that'd be fantastic.
I would be honored because I know I'm in the midst of angels. I can just feel it, and I really mean that. I'm not a pastor that talks out the side of his neck, but I feel a sense, a presence of an angelic movement going on here. And so I would like to just encourage everyone to remember, take a look at what you have rather than what you don't have. Take a look at what you can do rather than what you can't do. See the need. And we've heard that from Michele. See the need, be the need, be the resolution, and know that God is calling each and every one of you to do a specific, special something for him. And I mean that. You may not know what it is, but if you open yourselves up, God would truly speak to your heart and show you the next step, and he'll show you the next step and the next step. So that's how this process works. Just have faith. And with that, I'd like to offer a word of prayer for all of us in our endeavors. Gracious Father, we do thank you for this hour of unity. We thank you for this hour of information. And we ask, Lord, that you will allow us to think big, to think beyond what we see, to go the next step, to step out on faith, because Lord, we are standing in the need of being gap fillers, because there are so many that are falling through the cracks. Allow us, Lord, to take this information that we've heard and to act on them, because these resources are real and available. Now, Father God, bless each and every one of our endeavors and keep us encouraged. This we pray in the matchless, wonderful name of Jesus.
Amen. Thank you so much. You guys have been so sharing today, and it's such great information. I thank everybody for joining this session. I hope you gained some valuable information. I'm pretty certain you guys have. I did. And I hope you enjoy the rest of this great community that we've created here. And hopefully weather where you're at will be nice this weekend, and you can enjoy your weekend as well. Thank you all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Take care.